Hi there, good morning. Welcome to Aquarium's online academy. My name is Courtney. I'll be talking to you today as we're learning about ocean animals. I'm joined by my friend Tiffany, who will be guiding us along on this adventure. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about adaptations. Now, maybe you've heard this word before, maybe this is your first time. No worries, we're going to talk about what it means, and we're going to look at it in a few different animals that we have here in our oceans. Now, as we are talking today, if you want to share something you know, if you have a question, if you want to interact with us in any way, you can totally do that. So, if you want to text us, you can text us at 562-286-1838. Standard text rates will apply. The more you get involved, the more fun this program will be. If you are watching this later on, or you just want to contact us later, you can do that as well. So for that, we have an email address that you can send questions to. So that email address is live@lbaop.org. Excellent, and this will stay in the bottom, so if you need to use it again, it'll be right there for you. So like I said, we're going to be talking about adaptations. So what is an adaptation? There is that word. So an adaptation is just anything that an animal has that helps them survive. It's something that they're born with, and it might be a part of their body, or it might be an instinct they have. So I think when we're talking about adaptations, the best way to start is by looking at the animal we all know the most, the one we have the most first-hand experience with. That is us humans. So I want us to think about something that helps us survive. So what are some things that we do every day that keep us alive? There's something I have to do all the time. Can you guess what I'm hinting at? That is breathing. We have to breathe all the time in order to keep ourselves alive. So let's think, how do we do that? Well, I'll take a deep breath right now. And out. I use my mouth to breathe. I also use my nose a little bit. And inside my body, I had lungs that expanded and contracted. And all of that helped me get oxygen from all of the air around me. And that oxygen helps keep me alive. So like I said, we're not going to just talk about humans. We're going to talk about animals. So I'm going to step to the side. Now that we've talked a little bit about how we breathe, adaptations, we have those lungs, our mouth, our nose. All of that helps us take in air, get oxygen out of the air. Let's look at some of these animals and think about how they might be breathing. To start that, we can just start by making observations. So we talked about how we're getting oxygen from the air around us. Now, let's look at these fish we have here in our shark lagoon. How much air is around them? Not a lot. They're surrounded by something else. What are they surrounded by? They are surrounded by water. So how are they going to breathe? Well, they're going to need to have different adaptations than we have, because they live in a different place than we do. Maybe one of my shark friends or a fish friend will swim by. Oh, there's a beautiful fish, a Garibaldi. So it has something that helps it breathe. This right here, that is its gills. So gills are a really incredible adaptation. They help fish breathe underwater. So fish, just like us, they also need oxygen, but they're going to get it from the water using their gills. So that's just an example of an adaptation, how it helps this animal survive, and how an adaptation for different animals might depend on where they live. So like us, we live on land, we're surrounded by air, so that's why our lungs do a great job of helping us. But for our fish friends that live in the ocean, those gills are going to be with the adaptation they need to survive in the water. Excellent. Next, what else do we need to do every day to survive? I'm going to start thinking about my morning. So I got up, I got dressed. That is a good thing, but I'd probably survive if I didn't get dressed. I'd probably survive if I didn't brush my teeth this morning. I had breakfast. I might survive if I don't eat breakfast one time, but if I stop eating entirely, am I going to still live? No. So that is another thing that every animal has to do to survive. That is eating. So let's think again. What do we use? What parts of our body do we use to do that eating? So you might grab with your hand, maybe it's a piece of toast, and then you put it in your mouth, and you chew up with what? I use my teeth. You probably do as well. So teeth are a really great adaptation we can look at in an animal. How do they eat their food? What kind of adaptation do they have that helps them eat that food? And what kind of food are they looking at? And all of that is going to determine what is in their mouth. So a really great example of this is looking at different types of whales. Ooh, excellent. So this is what we'd call a baleen whale. I believe this is a humpback. Yes, Tiffany is confirming it is a humpback. So, like I said, we can always look at what an animal has in their mouth to try and understand how that is an adaptation that helps them survive. And if we don't know what they eat, looking at their mouth can give us a clue. So what do we see in this? Does it look like the we have? Not really, does it? It kind of almost looks like a bunch of hairs. Like I have a little bit of that same thing that they have in their mouth. You can see it doesn't look like our teeth at all, does it? So as scientists, we can figure out, all right, these two animals, humans and whales, are adapted to eat very different things. So baleen whales, like this humpback, they have that hairy stuff. I'll put it back in the middle screen. This is that baleen I was talking about. So this isn't used to chew up its food like we do. Instead, it filters its food. Why would it need to filter its food? How does filtering its food help it survive? Well, we can figure that out by looking at what it eats. So I have some krill over here at my dog cam, and this is what those great big humpbacks eat. They eat things like this. This is krill. It's kind of like a small shrimp. To give you an idea of how big it is, that's it compared to my finger. So only about 2 digits long. So they eat this very tiny food. So if they're going to try and chew every bite of that, that might be a little hard. They might have krill falling out of their mouth as they're chewing. It'd be hard to get a nice big mouthful and move on if they have to chew their food. So having teeth like ours would not be a very good adaptation for them. And that is where our baleen comes in. So this baleen, like I said, it filters it. What the whale will do is they'll get a big mouthful of water. And in that water will a bunch of these little krill. So they get a big mouthful, and then they're going to actually expand their throat to get as much in their mouth as possible. And then they're going to shoot out the water. The water will go through their baleen. But then the baleen, like I said, acts as a filter. So while the water is exiting their mouth, all that delicious krill is staying inside. So that is how they can get a nice big mouthful of krill, get a good meal, and move on and, like all of us, continue to survive. So that is why having baleen is a great adaptation for these whales that eat a tiny krill. But like I said, there is another kind of whale, another group of whales. We call those toothed whales. And this dolphin is a great example of that. So dolphins, they do not eat krill. They eat things like fish, squid, animals that are very soft on the outside. Now, humans also like to eat fish and squid. I like to eat squid. Not all my friends do. But a lot of people I know also eat fish. So if you've eaten either of those things, were you able to chew it? Probably. I hope you did. So they do have teeth because chewing is going to help them actually eat their food. So I have... Oh, let me see if I can put my dolphin skull on the dot cam. Or at least get a close-up on those teeth. So we have a whole dolphin skull, but we'll just look at their teeth real quick. So they have these sharp teeth that are made for getting that soft food like fish or squid in their mouth. And they can chew it up just like we might. Now, unlike us, they don't have any flat teeth in the back. They just have these pointy teeth. Now, we have that adaptation of having flat teeth because we also eat things like fruits and vegetables, things that are very fibrous that we need to chew and gnaw on for a while to break it down. But like I said, our dolphins, they are just eating fish and squid and other soft animals. So all they have to do is tear through that soft meat, and then they can eat and swallow their food. So they don't need to worry about chewing quite as much as we do. So that's why they only have an adaptation of those sharp, pointy teeth. Excellent. So we've seen how an animal's adaptation can differ depending on where they live, for like we talked about, living in the water or living on land surrounded by air, and it'll also help determine what their it'll also be determined by what they're eating. So an animal's teeth or lack thereof will be determined by what kind of food they're going to try and eat. Let's think about some other things that an animal might have to do to survive. So they have to get oxygen some way, they have to eat. But if every animal in the ocean is trying to eat, then is it possible that an animal might be trying to eat you? Well, we really don't have to worry about that as much as our animals in the ocean. So if a predator is trying to find a little animal in the ocean to eat, it really would help for that other animal to be able to move around, to escape. So animals do need to move. I want to talk about an animal that has a few different ways of moving, and that is the octopus. So it can move like this, like we're seeing right now. So let's watch this clip, make some observations. What do you notice about the way it's moving? How fast it's moving? Ooh. Looks like it's swimming around. Let's look at moving this first time again. It's going kind of fast, isn't it? So octopi, when they need to move really fast, maybe because they're avoiding a predator, or maybe there's some food that's really far away from them, like it looks like in this case. It's one of our octopi at the aquarium. Then they can use what's called jet propulsion. So on an octopus, they have this really cool adaptation. This is called a siphon. And it will help them take in a bunch of water, and then they will shoot that water out of their body so they can go super fast. That's why I call it jet propulsion, because it moves really fast by propelling themselves with that water. Now, that helps, like I said, if they're trying to get away from something fast, or they need to get to something fast. But what if they need to creep up on something? Because, like I said, a lot of animals are both prey and predator. They need to avoid the animals that are going to eat them, but they also have to find a way to find those animals that they want to eat. So they might need to sneak up on another animal. So how's our octopus friend going to do that? Let's watch what this octopus does. This is one of our giant Pacific octopi here at the aquarium. So something our husbandry team will do here at the aquarium is find fun ways to feed our octopus. They will not just give them the food straight up, they'll make the octopus work for it. That way they can keep the octopus's brain active and engaged. So it looks like this octopus right now is looking for that food. So what do we notice? What part of its body is it using to move around right now? It's using all of these arms. What else is it using to move around? So it has those arms, but it's also using something to stick on. Yeah, you might have noticed those suction cups. So when an octopus is trying to sneak up on something, probably something it's trying to eat, it uses these arms to kind of crawl around, and the suction cups help it grab onto surface. And then, why does it have so many arms, and what is that in the middle? Well, let's look at my friend octopus right here. That is its mouth. So we talked a little bit about what the kind of mouth an animal has and how that can tell us about how it eats. But looking at mouth placement can also tell us a lot too. So we talked about how an octopus is going to try and sneak up on animals. Well, they're going to try and sneak up on the animal such that they can grab it and then bring it into that mouth right in the middle of their body. So it helps a lot to have the mouth in the middle of all of those arms so they can all grab food potentially. They can even drop down on top of their food. Excellent. So we've talked a little bit about how an animal is going to breathe, how they're going to eat, how they're going to move. But some predators are a lot faster than the animals that they're trying to eat. So if you're that animal that's trying to avoid being eaten, maybe you can't move that fast. Maybe you don't have a lot of room to move too. So what's something else you can do to avoid being found by that predator? To figure this out, I think let's look at some of our coral fish. So let's make some observations. What do we notice about them and their body? What do we notice? And what do we notice about where they live? Well, I see a lot of coral. Probably noticed that as well. Would you say these animals are colorful? I'd say they're pretty colorful. Not all of them are super bright, but a lot of them have a few different colors on their body. Ooh, that parrotfish is really colorful. Now, how about the coral around them? Would you say the coral's colorful? Yeah, it kind of stands out. There's a few rocks that aren't too colorful, but that coral itself is really colorful. So another thing that can be an adaptation for an animal is the color of its body. So for these coral fish that live among the colorful coral, it helps them to also be colorful. Now to us, when we look at these coral fish, we might think, wow, they're so beautiful and eye-catching, we just want to look at them. But for other animals in the ocean, this is a great example as well, having that colorful body next to all of that colorful coral actually does a great job of helping them blend in. So just by the color of their body, that's an adaptation that helps them survive and avoid predators. Another thing to look at is we talked about what it might be like if you live somewhere where there's not a lot of room. Do any of these fish look really, really big? It might be hard to tell because we're a little zoomed in, but none of them are that much bigger than the size of my palm. And that is because they live in this coral reef. So the size of an animal's body can also be an adaptation, and that might depend on, like I said, where they live. So they live in this coral reef. There's lots of these nooks and crannies that help them hide, and it gives them shelter. So having a tiny body that can fit into those nooks and crannies does a lot to help them survive. Now, if we were outside of this coral reef, if we were in the open ocean and we were among, say, bigger animals like the whale, we had a lot of space, being tiny there would probably not be as helpful. Being tiny there might make it hard to get away from really big predators like a great white shark, which lives out in the open ocean. It sometimes will visit places like the coral reef. But when you're living somewhere that's wide and open like the open ocean, being bigger tends to help out a lot. But when you come somewhere like this coral reef, that small body, like I said, helps them survive. So the color and the size of an animal's body is going to be an adaptation that is related to where they live. Now there's another animal. Ooh, it's a great example of blending in. We have this angelfish, and that yellow on its body does a great job to help it blend in with the yellow coral that it lives around. So we talked about how animals will find shelter in their habitat. These tropical fish find shelter in the coral reef, but the reef itself is shelter for another animal. Actually, I want to draw your attention. Do you see these like little bumps? You might have a close-up of some coral. So when we talk about coral, we're not just talking about the reef, that hard stuff that all the fish live around. We're actually talking about an animal itself. So corals have a really interesting adaptation. And it's actually that reef that they build inside that reef, if you were to take a close-up look, you'd see a bunch of little holes, and inside each of those holes lives one of these. So this is a coral polyp. So when we talk about coral, this is the animal that we're talking about, these little polyps. And what they do is they produce, it's called calcium carbonate. But basically, it's a mineral that ends up forming that reef. And that reef ends up being basically their home. So I want you to think about our homes. What do they do for us? Do our homes help us survive? I'd say they do. If we have a really big storm come by, they give us shelter. It keeps us safe and warm. So similarly, that reef, that calcium carbonate home that these corals create gives them shelter and helps them survive. Excellent. So we talked about how an animal might stay safe and have an adaptation. Ooh, this is another great close-up on some coral. See all those polyps. And coral polyps are really interesting. They all live together. They're called a colonial animal because they all live together in a big colony. And that's how they're able to create those large reefs that end up creating a home for them and the animals that live among the reef. We have some more time. I talked a little bit about staying warm. So for us humans on land, how do we stay warm? Well, we can live somewhere warm. That's great. We have an adaptation of our brain that allows us to design and create clothes that keep us warm. But how about animals that live in the ocean? How are they going to stay warm? Ooh, Tiffany read my mind. So for those fish we were looking at earlier, they don't need to worry about staying warm much. Their body is about the same temperature as the water they're in. But if you are an animal or a mammal, like this otter, you do have to stay warm, even though you're living in really cold water. So as humans, we're mammals as well. So we are warm-blooded. Now, if you were to go into the water this otter is in, we would find it really cold. So how is this fellow mammal living here and thriving, even though it's warm-blooded as well? Well, it has a few ways to do that. And one of those is my favorite part of the otter, and that is its adorable fur. So otters have really, really thick fur that keep them nice and toasty. In fact, if I had some otter fur and I was looking at just this amount, my fingers, there would be 1,000,000 hairs there. It's the thickest, densest fur on the planet. So that's one thing that keeps them warm. But otters are a little interesting because a lot of mammals in the ocean, they have what's called blubber. Our whale and dolphin friends that we were looking at earlier, they have blubber as well. It's a very thick layer of fat that helps keep them warm. We also have fat that helps insulate our body as well. It's not quite as thick as that blubber that the whales and dolphins have. To show you, we all have that in common with them. Now, our otter, they don't have any blubber at all. You'll see they're a little bit more petite than that whale or dolphin. So how else are they going to stay warm if they don't have a thick layer of fat to keep them warm? Well, it ties into what my friend is doing right now, and that is eating. Otters have a really cool adaptation where they just eat basically all day. Every day an otter has to eat about 1/4 of their body weight. How does that help them stay warm, though? Well, when we eat something, as well as the otters, our body has to digest it. And that kind of gets into the process of using our metabolism. So basically, it is their metabolism, their body burning all those calories from that food that keeps them warm. So that's why they have to eat so much every day, because that is how they're staying warm in that cold water that they live in. Ooh. And this is one of their favorite snacks. That is an urchin. So we talked a little bit about how animals, their teeth help them eat their food. Now, some animals, their teeth might not get the job done all the way. I have a little otter skull with me right here. So you can see our otter. Oh, let me go to the dock cam. So we are looking at our urchin friend. It's pretty spiky on the outside. Now our otter has these sharp teeth. Not by doing a good job for scraping food outside, out of the urchin, but how are they going to take a first bite of that urchin? Their mouth, the palate of their mouth looks kind of similar to ours. Well, we talked about how an adaptation isn't just something that an animal has on their body. It can also be an instinct, a behavior that they have that helps them survive. And for otters, it is using something hard like a rock or a shell to crack open things like this urchin. So what otters will do is they will find a nice rock or shell that they really enjoy, and they'll use that to crack open an urchin or a crab or maybe a clam, crack that shell open, and then their teeth do a great job of scraping and getting food out of that shellfish or urchin. They also have another adaptation that kind of relates to that rock, and that is their armpits. I know, have you ever thought about your armpits as an adaptation? Well, it is for our otters. So if they have a rock or shell they really love, that's been doing a great job for them, they want to hold on to it. So what they can do is put that rock or shell inside their armpit, and they have a little flap that basically acts as a built-in pocket. So they can dive down and get their food, pop back up, do all their other little otter activities, and still have that rock or shell on them so they can eat their food. So we talked a little bit about that instinct they have to find something hard, and then an adaptation on their body that helps them keep that item. See, so we talked a little bit about how animals survive by eating, moving, breathing, blending in. Ooh. Ooh. Tiffany showed me this great clip. So she's going to grab all these little rocks. Where is she putting them? Into her little armpit pocket. So here at the aquarium, we give our otters food. We just hand them shrimp. Usually it's already has the shell off of it. So they don't really need to crack their food open the same way they would in their natural habitat. But like I said, this is an instinct. So they're still finding these hard items and putting in their pocket, even though they might not really need to. So that instinct helps them survive, and they're going to follow it even if they're in a situation where it's not completely necessary. Let's watch our friend collect their items again one more time. We'll talk about one more adaptation. Excellent. So one other thing an animal might need to help it survive is protection. We talked about how corals have a shelter around them they build, but some animals, they need to move around a little bit more than corals. Some animals like turtles have to move around a lot. They have to go all over the ocean and onto land, and there's a lot of animals in that trek that might want to eat them. So how are they going to avoid being eaten? Is there anything on our turtle's body you can think that might help them avoid getting a bite taken out of them? Yes, you're probably thinking of their shell. So turtles have a hard shell on their body. Now it's right in the middle of their body. They have their head sticking out, their flippers in the front and their back. Those help them move around. But that shell is a part of their body. It is attached. If you watch a lot of cartoons like me growing up, you might think they can pop in and out of it, but they can't in real life. It actually grows with them as they grow. And that's really important because as their body gets bigger, they're going to need more and more room. What is their shell covering? Let's think. What might be in that middle part of their body that the shell is covering? It's probably things like their heart, their stomach, and a lot of other really important internal organs. So that is why having the shell right in the middle of their body is another great adaptation. It covers the most vulnerable parts of their body that do the most to help them survive. Ooh, and we can even see one of our turtles getting some food. Turtles, let's look at what our turtle's eating and see how their mouth is an adaptation that helps them eat that. Let's look. Ooh, it looks like they're getting, it's either some squid or some clam. Yeah, Tiffany's saying she thinks it's clam as well. So what does their mouth look like? If they're eating that soft clam, it might be a little chewy. So they actually have a beak. Oh, perfect picture. So that helps them chomp off things like the clam, or they might be eating jellies, or even seagrass. So that's just another example of an adaptation our turtles have. Well, it looks like we are at the end of our time together. So today we're able to talk about what an adaptation is, some adaptations we have, adaptations that animals have to breathe, eat, move around, blend in, stay safe, stay warm, and different parts of their body and different instincts they have that help them with all of that. So I want to thank you for joining us today. I hope you join us later on. I want to thank Tiff for helping me out, and I hope you have a great day.